Welcome, everyone, to our introduction of Daniel chapter 2. And I got an error. Hopefully, that's not recorded. There we go. Can you see chapter 2 highlights?
Yep. Yep.
All right. So, our alphabetic leader here, Nebuchadnezzar, is going to have a dream, and he's going to put out a challenge to his wise men. And this challenge is unlike any we've ever heard about in scripture. So you say, wait a minute, I've heard about Joseph interpreting dreams. Well, interpreting, yes, but Nebuchadnezzar was a sharp guy. He said, I want you to tell me what my dream was and interpret it. Much higher standard that Nebuchadnezzar. He knew what his charlatan, mystical men were like, and how it was easy. Even I can interpret a dream. I'm not going to get it right, but I can, listen to you and tell you what I think it means. So he sets an incredibly high bar. Tell me what I dreamt and tell me what the dream means. Daniel turns to God in prayer. This is the takeaway if we have to go no further tonight. That faced with a challenge in his life that literally is affecting his ability to stay alive, Daniel seeks God in prayer. That's his first move. And as a result, God is faithful and reveals this dream and its meaning. He explains the dream and he says, hey, what you're dreaming about is a succession of kingdoms. And it's going to start with you. You're the gold head, and we're going to move all the way down to, you know, iron and clay mixed together. So he gives them this wonderful vision of what leadership is going to be like in the successive kingdoms. Many scholars who study the scriptures today think that that story and that vision of Daniel can apply to us today. So we'll talk about that as we get more in detail. Daniel doesn't take credit for this. He doesn't say, you're lucky you know me. He says, hey, God alone is the one who can reveal these mysteries, and he is the ruler over kings. Because of that, we see that the king Nebuchadnezzar acknowledges Daniel's God and really elevates Daniel to be in a very, very high position of authority in the kingdom. So, in some detail, chapters or verses 1 to 13, we see he has this dream and it deeply troubles him. He knows that he can expose the limitations of the false claims of the Babylonian Chaldeans, these ones that are mystical men. There's, in fact, a church tradition. This is not biblical based, but there's a church tradition that Daniel's efforts to save the mystical men includes astrologers, and those astrologers are the
Mm.
origin of the ones who visit Jesus when Jesus is an infant, some 600 years in the future. So obviously it's their descendants, but that whole, I'll say, profession was saved by the work of Daniel. So again, that's church tradition, church history, not necessarily scriptural. But there's this crisis that's about to be revealed that Daniel describes. I mentioned in 14 to 23, he um, has a very tactful response. He doesn't panic. He gathers his companions and they seek God's guidance in prayer. And as a result of that, this mystery is revealed. So how to apply this in our life can be that when you are faced with those challenges, should I not, the first place you turn is not only to your fellow brothers of wise men, but to God himself in prayer. 24 to 30, the king is about to execute all the wise men for their failure, and Daniel intervenes and he stops it. And again, this is that church story that these might be the origins of the wise astrologers that come from the east and seek the Star of Bethlehem. He gives credit solely to God, and as a result, there's a very public acknowledgement of the power of Daniel's God. Here's some details about that prayer. When he dreams of this statue, and it's made up of different types of metal, starting with gold at the head and working its way down. Um, and that imagery shows that, while this kingdom is great and in fact doing the work God has set aside, by the time it gets down to Cyrus in 539, when the uh, Jews are allowed to return after this period of exile, each successive kingdom is going to be uh, less um, concentrated. Nebuchadnezzar's is a pure um, king-led dynasty. He doesn't share his power. When it gets down to the successive kings, they are more like the Roman Empire. They share through a senate, and they have a division of power, and it shows that conversion that's going to take place over time. There's lots of good information about the interpretation of that head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, feet of a mixture of iron and clay. And then this rock, and this rock strikes at the base, not only topples the statue, meaning that its kingdom is going to be superior to all the prior kingdoms of Babylon and Persia, Greece, Roman, and any other future powers, England, United States, China, all those powers are going to be laid waste. And that mountain, that rock that becomes a mountain, is symbolic of God's kingdom. So we see in Daniel's vision here in 600 or so AD or BC, that same vision that we saw in Revelation in our prior study, that ultimately God's kingdom will displace all the kingdoms of the earth. And it's God's ultimate reign that we read about in this explanation. That's what we have to display tonight. It culminates with Nebuchadnezzar's acknowledgement of Daniel's God and the public recognition that he has that sovereignty within a pagan court. So that's what we have to look forward to tonight. I look forward to finishing our study. Let me stop recording.